The US economy didn't collapse. It didn't crash. It didn't explode. Instead, something quieter happened. Millions of Americans are still shopping, still paying rent, still filling their gas tanks, but they're doing it with money they don't actually have. And that's the part no headline likes to sit with. Before we continue, this is Antman Finance. The goal here is to make sense of money and the economy without the noise. If that's your thing, feel free to subscribe. Back to the story. Because in 2026, the American economy isn't running on growth. It's running on debt. Not government debt, not Wall Street leverage, household debt, credit cards, buy now, pay later, personal loans, student loans that never really went away. And the system only works as long as people can keep borrowing tomorrow to survive today. The question is, what happens when they can't? Let's start with why this suddenly matters now. For most of the last decade, debt felt invisible. Interest rates were low. Monthly payments were manageable. Borrowing didn't feel like borrowing. It felt like normal life. Swipe now, worry later. But 2026 is different. Rates are still high compared to the past. Prices never came back down, and incomes didn't catch up, which means millions of households are quietly running a math problem that doesn't resolve. Not next month, not next year, ever. And you can see it in the data if you know where to look. Credit card balances are at record highs, not adjusted for inflation, actual nominal highs. Delinquencies are rising fastest among people under 40, the same group that was told debt was manageable as long as they stayed flexible. Buy now, pay later loans, the friendliest form of debt, are now being used for groceries, utilities, medical bills. That's new. Historically, when people borrow to invest, homes, education, businesses, that's survivable. When people borrow to eat, that's a warning light. But here's the uncomfortable part. From the outside, none of this looks like a crisis. Stores are open, flights are full, unemployment is not exploding. Which is why this system is so dangerous. Because it feels stable right up until it isn't. To understand why, you need to understand how modern American consumption actually works. Most people think spending is driven by income. It isn't. It's driven by monthly payments. If the payment fits, the purchase happens. That's true for cars, phones, homes, subscriptions, even groceries now. The economy doesn't ask, "Can you afford this?" It asks, "Can you make this month's payment?" Debt stretches the present by stealing from the future. And for a long time, that trade-off felt painless. Low rates made borrowing cheap. Rising asset prices made people feel wealthier. And inflation quietly reduced the real value of old debt. It was the perfect illusion. Until inflation flipped the script. Prices jumped fast. Wages moved slowly. Rates shot up. Suddenly, debt didn't shrink quietly in the background anymore. It grew teeth. The same credit card balance now costs more every month. The same auto loan eats a bigger share of income. Refinancing stopped being an escape hatch. And here's where the math gets ugly. If your income grows at 3% a year, your rent grows at 6%, your groceries grow at 8%, and your debt interest grows at 18%, you don't need a recession to break. You just need time. That's the part most forecasts miss. This isn't about mass layoffs. It's about slow suffocation. Now layer in buy now, pay later. On paper, it looks harmless. No interest, short term, small amounts. But psychologically, it changes everything. It disconnects spending from pain. When every purchase becomes 4 smaller payments, nothing feels expensive anymore. Until all 4 hit at once. BNPL doesn't replace credit cards. It stacks on top of them. Multiple payment streams, multiple due dates, zero breathing room. And here's the irony. The more stretched households become, the more innovative the debt products get. Longer auto loans, subscription financing, payment plans for things that used to be basic expenses. This isn't financial empowerment, it's financial adaptation to stagnation. The system is evolving not because people are thriving, but because they're barely holding on. And the economy quietly depends on that holding pattern. Consumer spending is still the engine of U.S. growth, over 2/3 of it. When consumers slow down, everything slows down. So debt becomes the bridge, a bridge between flat wages and rising costs, between what people earn and what life demands. But bridges crack under weight, and there's a second layer most people miss. Debt doesn't just fund consumption, it hides fragility. As long as people can borrow, defaults stay low, missed payments stay manageable. The data looks fine until lenders tighten, and they always do, eventually. When defaults rise, credit limits get cut, promotions disappear, approvals slow. That's when the trap snaps shut, not because people suddenly became irresponsible, but because the escape routes closed. This is where hype and reality part ways. The hype says, households are resilient, balance sheets are strong, consumers are adapting. The reality is more precise. Some households are resilient, many are fragile, and adaptation has limits. Resilience isn't infinite, it's cumulative. Each month of borrowing reduces future flexibility. Each minimum payment locks in another obligation. Debt doesn't feel dangerous when it's static. It becomes dangerous when it compounds. And in 2026, compounding is doing most of the talking. Now zoom out. This isn't just a household problem, it's a systemic one. Banks earn from interest, retailers earn from financed sales, fintech companies earn from transaction volume, markets earn from continued consumption. Everyone benefits, as long as the borrower doesn't break, which creates a quiet incentive to keep the game going. Extend terms, lower upfront pain, defer the reckoning. But economies don't resolve imbalances forever. They surface them, sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly. Historically, debt-driven slowdowns don't look dramatic at first. They look like caution, like consumers trading down, like fewer big purchases, like stress in specific age groups. Then they spread. Housing slows, auto sales stall, retail weakens, job growth cools. Not because demand vanished, but because it was pulled forward from the future and already spent. And here's the part no one likes to say out loud. There's no clean reset. Households can't inflate their way out. Rates can't drop fast without other consequences. Wages can't jump overnight, which means the adjustment happens the hard way, through reduced spending, through defaults, through lifestyle compression, not collapse, compression. That's why this moment matters, not because 2026 is a breaking point, but because it's an inflection point, the year when debt stopped being a convenience and started being a constraint. The economy can still function like this for a while, but every system that relies on borrowed time eventually runs out of it, and when it does, the damage isn't loud. It's personal. It shows up as delayed milestones, missed opportunities, a permanent sense of financial instability even in good times. So the real question isn't whether Americans are surviving on debt. They are. The real question is how long survival can pass for stability. Because once borrowing stops being optional and becomes necessary, the margin for error disappears. And an economy without margin is an economy one shock away from learning the difference between coping and breaking. That's the uncomfortable math, and we haven't finished calculating it yet. The goal here isn't to predict the future. It's to understand the present. That's Antman Finance. No panic, no hype. Subscribe if you want more clarity.